With the stain dry and our marine ply panel cut to size, we're ready to install the first panel. I'm using a lot of glue as part of our system. When the panel's raised in place and aligned correctly to the framing, I use 2 temporary screws at the top of the panel to hold it in place.
You come and go like a monsoon rain. You hide and show like a lightning bolt. You have it all.
We're working with an existing steel awning structure. The customer didn't like the look of it, so we decided to clad it in treated timber and incorporate this bamboo privacy screen. Last week we completed stage 1 of this structure, which was to get all the primary framing in. We poured a reinforced concrete slab about 75 mil thick. That's what's going to anchor the bottom of our structure. The original function for this space was going to be a storage shed with custom shelves all built on the inside, but now it's also going to be doubling up as a dark room because my customer is a professional photographer. So she thought there'd be enough space in here to set up a small darkroom area. And the whole structure is going to be sheeted with marine ply from the inside. So we'll have rough exposed frames on the outside to give us our Japanese architectural theme.
I used the patterns in the bamboo screen to lay out the structure of our shed, with the idea it would tie the 2 structures together and help them belong in the same space.
Join me as I take you through the process of constructing this custom-built shed.
In this episode, we'll complete the frame and add the marine ply panels for our walls. I start out by getting some accurate measurements to cut the pieces we'll need. To get a really accurate measurement with my tape measure for this span, I'm temporarily securing a timber block with my clamp, so my tape measure can hook into it and I can pull it tight to get an extra accurate measurement. The next piece of framing we install will be the beam that runs across the top of this wall. I want it to sit tight flat up against the roof sheeting, so I'll be doing cutouts or checkouts around the small steel beams that are part of the roof structure. All the measurements are transposed to paper, so I can do some calculations and draw out the beam before I cut it. This will give me a better chance of cutting it once and having a good fit. You can see here how all my measurements are from the same reference point, which in this case is the far left edge of the beam. I'm now ready to select a piece of timber and start cutting it out. I double check we have a piece that's straight and not twisted and lay it on the saw for cutting to length. My first step is to harvest the best piece of material out of the stock length that's come from the lumberyard. For a critical piece of the framing like this beam, I actually cut both ends of the timber. This helps me ensure I have accurate 90-degree cuts on both ends, and also gives me an opportunity to discard any bad knots or dings that are in the timber. After cutting one end off, I turn the timber around and re-measure it for the final and accurate cut of our length. The next step is to transpose all the measurements we have on paper onto the timber beam, measuring from a single point of reference to ensure our accuracy, like I mentioned earlier. Here I'm carefully marking out all the notches I'll be cutting out with my saw and chisel. By cutting the timber in thin slices, you can easily knock out most of the material with your hammer and then finish off the edges with a chisel. After finishing the second notch, or checkout as it's sometimes called, I bevel the edges of the timber with the plane to help it match the frame of the established bamboo screen. To help seat this beam in place, I've added 2 temporary blocks to the posts either side to work as a ledge so I can sit the beam on top whilst I adjust it into position. I've asked the homeowner to help me out by handing me different size packers so I can get a tight and snug fit with this beam sitting flat to the metal ceiling. Once I have it sitting flat and plumb on the posts, I fix it in place to the timber posts and then add some additional screws through the pre-existing steel ceiling structure. I continue to work my way around the walls of the shed, adding the upper beams that are sometimes known as lintels or headers. These are much easier than the first one, as there's no cutouts necessary in them.
Back up the drive a bit, could you see what this is? This is a part of it all. Over and over, injustice to injury. This is a part of it all. Could you hike back to it, fight with it, sit with it? This is a part of it all. Ask around you and make peace with what is there.
With all the framing complete in the top of the shed, I bring my attention down to the floor section. I have a bit of tidying up to do on the concrete floor by cutting a sharp edge along the inside to remove the damp coarse plastic and to create a crisp corner and edge for the marine ply we'll be adding later. I'm using a diamond bit cutting disc on my grinder to cut most of it out. Then I finish off the awkward corners with a hammer and chisel. I work my way around the entire floor and then sweep out the debris. When we poured our concrete, I installed a piece of timber to create a void that would form the shape of the threshold of our doorway. This is going to ensure that any water that wants to run down the door will run outside of our structure and not inside onto the floor. The timber form comes out easily from our concrete slab, as it's designed and cut specifically to pull out of the concrete slab without jamming. Here you can see how I have an angled cut in the middle of the form. This enables the timbers to be removed easily without cracking our concrete.
Will you only drink from the thoughts of yourself? Are you under the canopy spell? You dig in your heels and spread the disease. You're spreading the disease. Back up the drive a bit, could you see what this is? This is a part of it all. Over and over, injustice to injury. This is a part of it all. Could you hike back to it, fight with it, sit with it? This is a part of it all. Ask around you and make peace with what is there.
After cutting our sleeping material in half and beveling the edges, we've generated a number of framing pieces that we'll be using to complete our wall panels. We have 10 wall panels to construct, so I'm starting with one to rehearse the process. And if it goes well, then we'll just repeat this process throughout the entire shed. I need to establish the heights of our horizontal pieces in the framing. They'll be dividing the wall panels up into thirds. So there's an upper piece of horizontal framing and a lower piece of horizontal framing. An efficient way to mark these out is to cut some scrap timber to the appropriate height. I can then set the template on our perfectly flat floor and scribe the mark with my pencil and have a completely even and horizontal mark for all four corners of our structure. I want to install the 2 vertical 2x4s that'll make up the structure for the back of our shed. These 2 vertical pieces will be adding some extra strength and structure to the top and bottom plates, where I had to make a join in the timber to achieve the span we needed. The vertical posts have been cut to fit tight, so I'm using my rubber hammer to tap them into alignment. I take my time with this process because I want to get them exactly vertical. I continue to check with my level and make adjustments as necessary. I use a rubber hammer for this process instead of a normal hammer, so it doesn't bruise my timber. I'll be using the same system to secure the top and bottom of all our posts. It involves fixing two 125mm heavy timber screws on a 45-degree angle, sometimes referred to as toe-nailing. I drilled two pilot holes, one to help countersink the head of the screw, and the second thinner drill bit to drill out a hole so the screw can go through the timber without splitting it. I then fix them in place with my impact driver. The first screw is only set halfway in, so it doesn't push the post out of alignment. Then I drive the second screw all the way home and come back to the first screw and finish it off.
A bit naive and so eager to please. You know I played for love, but it got me on my knees. Now's the time to reap what I've sown. Your words echoing in every single bone. Underwater, so far out at sea, there's no cure for what you're telling me, and soon I'm on my way. Yes, I'm on my way.
I'm now ready to start installing some of the horizontal pieces I mentioned earlier. We fix these in using the same process of using two heavy timber screws on a 45-degree angle. The joinery in our framing will get extra support from the marine ply panels as they're screwed, glued and nailed onto the back of these frames.
You said, let me tell you everything I've seen, the friends I've made, and then you tell me how you've been. Look a little closer, it's been quite some time. You gotta let me know if I'm out of line.
After this rainstorm let up, it gave me a chance to stain some of our marine ply panels. My process for staining these panels quickly and efficiently is to paint one hemisphere at a time. I use the roller to spread the stain evenly all over the board and then follow it up with a brush to get a nice finish on it.
A bit naive and so eager to please. You know I played for love, but it got me on my knees. Now's the time to reap what I've sown. Your words echoing in every single bone.
After painting the first two panels of marine ply with our Japan black, I realise we'll only have enough stain if we're careful with it, so I'm going to pre-cut a bunch of our plywood panels so I'm not wasting any of our stain.
You're a good man, quite the best man, a real fine man. When the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the run on while it's getting hectic. There's no use in looking back, going back, wishing back.
With the stain dry and our marine ply panel cut to size, we're ready to install the first panel. I'm using a lot of glue as part of our system for fixing this marine ply panel to the treated timber frame. I want to thoroughly cover all the surfaces that the plywood's going to come in contact with. The tricky part of this process is trying not to get any of the glue where it doesn't belong. I don't want any glue smears on the outside of the panel that's had the stain put on it. This glue is really hard to clean off. I've placed 10mm packers on the top and bottom of our frame. This is to help hold the panel away from the glue until we get it perfectly aligned. When the panel's raised in place and aligned correctly to the framing, I used 2 temporary screws at the top of the panel to hold it in place. I then apply a continuous thick bead of liquid nails glue along the bottom of the panel edge. I do this from the outside as it's the easiest way to access it. I then remove the temporary screws that are holding the panel on the packers, remove the packers, and start the fixing process of pressing the panel into our wood frame. I then add an even spread of screws to lock it in place, starting with the corners and then moving to the middle sections. I take a look at the outside of the panel to double check we haven't got any glue in the wrong place. I use my pencil to mark out the horizontal frames, so I'll be able to put the screws in the correct place. I then add a row of screws across the horizontal beams to help fix the plywood in place. I'm using square head countersink screws so they'll sit flat under the surface of the plywood. The final part of the process is fixing screws into the bottom edge of the panel. This is the most important glue joint of the whole panel, as it's going to help keep the shed waterproof. With the panel secured on the beams with screws, I then add galvanized roofing nails, hammering an even spread around all the edges and across the horizontal beams, so we've got a really strong contact. With the first panel successfully installed and secure, I move on to the panel next to it and repeat the whole process.
Blue sky, oh, when the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know that what has been, and there's no use looking back, going back, wishing back. You master how to simplify. You turn rain into a blue sky. Oh, when the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know what has been happening. There's no use in looking back, going back, wishing back.
One of the critical steps of securing our panel without any air gaps or light gaps as we're building a darkroom is to make sure it's really clean with no sawdust or debris. I want the panel to be able to sit really flat on the glue edge so we get a complete weather seal. During our dry fitting process, I'm trying to get the panel completely vertical. I use the clamp to temporarily secure it in place whilst I adjust the packers on the bottom. When I'm satisfied I have it properly aligned, I remove the panel and start adding our glue bead. You might notice that I've got a double glue bead around the outside edges. That's extra insurance to make sure no light or moisture will leak through the panels. It's also important to have a steady hand when you're applying the glue. I don't want any broken lines in the glue bead. I want a nice, fat, thick, continual bead. This will also help avoid any air or light gaps. I then carefully put it back in place and fix it off with screws and nails as we did the first panel.
When the wind blows and the windows are closing, you let the world know that what has been, and there's no use looking back, going back, wishing back.
Later on we'll be installing a window in our shed to add some natural lighting. We have to prepare for that by incorporating a window frame into this next panel. The first thing I'm going to have to do is square up the top of our window frame. It's set to the angle of the roof, which is designed for rain runoff. I need it to be completely horizontal for the installation of our window, so I have to cut a thin wedge to compensate for this angle. After cutting a thin wedge of the same material that our framing's made out of, I tack it in place with a single nail to see if we've achieved making the top of this window frame completely horizontal. After a final check with my spirit level, I'm ready to glue it in place. I'm adding an extra thick bead of glue on this piece of timber, as this is an area where water could get in. I add a couple of nails to hold the piece in place. Then I'm ready to measure the opening for the rough window frame we'll be installing. I'm adding our standard extra thick glue bead to a piece of framing cut to size that I added wood stain to previously whilst I was staining the marine ply panels. I use a piece of scrap plywood so I can set this frame flush to the inside of our wall. We'll be adding another frame over the top of this piece later. I repeat this process to the other 3 sides of our frame, making sure it stays flush to the inside wall.
I know the hour's getting late. I shouldn't sit here and contemplate. I just can't stop thinking about it. I won't forget a single thing, from drunken nights to Sunday mornings, and how you smiled at me. Wish you'd stayed here beside me. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Wish you'd stay here right with me. I can't shake that feeling that we said goodbye too soon.
With our window frame complete, it's time for me to manufacture some more of our framing material. There's some good reasons why I keep manufacturing our framing material or cutting out panels in batches, and that's due to the limited space I have to work in. One of the less exciting and interesting aspects of construction is managing your material flow. In this case, I've got large, heavy sleeper material and large plywood panels to manage. I've also got to leave room for cutting the material.
I won't forget a single thing, drunken nights, Sunday mornings, how you smiled at me. Wish you'd stayed here beside me. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Wish you'd stayed here right with me. I can't shake that feeling that we said goodbye too soon.
After spraying the cut edge of our framing for extra protection against termites and rot, I install the next section of wall. With the framing secure and plumb for 3 of our 4 walls, I move on to adding the panels. With this being the 3rd panel I've installed, the process is becoming quite streamlined. This is an unconventional way to build a shed. It only makes sense because of all the parameters we have to work with. There was a certain aesthetic we wanted to achieve. It has to be engineered and strong so it'll hold up. It also has to be weatherproof. And in this case it has to be light proof, as it's going to be used as a dark room. There's always a bit of stress involved when you push yourself outside your comfort zone, but it's also rewarding when it comes together and seems to be working. So although the configuration of our shed darkroom is definitely unconventional, all the materials and fixings are the normal things you'd use to build a solid shed that would stand up to weather and last a long time. The frame sitting on the outside of our structure is mitigated by the fact that we're using treated timber, so it should hold up in the elements. All the panels are made out of marine ply instead of conventional plywood, so they'll also have extra resistance against rain and weather. And then we're using a combination of heavy timber screws and galvanized nails to fix the whole thing together. So I feel confident the shed will have the look my customer wants and also last for a long time. My strategy for installing the panels around the window section was to fix the two main pieces either side of it in place and then custom cut the panels so we can get a really nice fit.
Standing underneath the lights, look into each other's eyes. Tired snowflakes are coming down, collapse into water when they hit the ground. I hear the sound of empty streets, and yesterday has gone to sleep. So all that's left is you and me. I can promise you're the only thing I see. Hold my hand and hear the words I say. Close your eyes and let us fade away. Build a secret place for you and me. Let our minds be caught up in a dream.
I'm now ready to install the panels for this outside wall. You'll notice I'm wrapping a towel in these timbers that I placed the panel on. That's to help protect the finish that we've put on it. You can save a lot of time by pre-painting materials before you install them. There's a lot of advantages in this. Trying to apply stain on a finished structure can be messy and difficult, and the potential of spilling the stain in the wrong place. The stain we're using, which is called Japan Black, also has a protective coating on it. So by staining the entire panel before installation, I get a protective layer underneath the framing area, which will help add longevity to our structure. Because our marine ply panels are only 6mm thick, I wanted to use a lot of fixings to attach them to the framing. This is to help avoid any buckling or warping in the panels. We're also trying to achieve a weather-tight seal. And because I'm using so many fixing points, I'm combining screws with nails. I use the screws to lock in all the corners and middle sections, and then fill it out with galvanized nails. By combining construction glue, screws and nails, we'll have a really secure attachment to our frame.
There's no one left but you and me. It's like a made-up place that only we can see. Standing underneath the lights, look into each other's eyes. Tired snowflakes are coming down, collapse into water when they hit the ground. I hear the sound of empty streets, and yesterday has gone to sleep. So all that's left is you and me. I can promise you're the only thing I see. Hold my hand and hear the words I say. Close your eyes and let us fade away. Build a secret place for you and me. Let our minds be caught up in a dream.
I'm adding a temporary brace to stop the horizontal pieces of frame pushing these vertical pieces out of alignment. I want the horizontal blocks to fit tightly. So by adding this brace in the center section, it'll stop the vertical pieces bending into the middle.
A lonely wind is passing by, tries to carry all the whispers that it finds. The walls are listening when we talk, making echoes as we walk. There's no one left but you and me.
After securing securing the left and right pieces, I use my spirit level to align the center section.
Hold my hand and hear the words I say. Close your eyes and let us fade away. Build a secret place for you and me. Let our minds get caught up in a dream.
When the top row of horizontal frames complete, I repeat the process on the bottom, but this time I don't need the temporary brace. I'm now ready to add the final panels for this last wall.
Standing underneath the lights, look into each other's eyes. There's no one left but you and me.
It's quite satisfying attaching this final panel. It's been 9 panels in all, and by this stage it's become quite streamlined. With all our framing and panels secured, this completes the principal structure of our shared darkroom.
Close your eyes and let us fade away. Build a secret place for you and me. Let our minds be caught up in a dream.
Join me on the next episode as we start fitting out the inside of the shed, starting with the ceiling, doorway, and custom bench for the photographic equipment.
Quiet voices in the night. Time is running out of sight. Lonely wind is passing by. Tries to carry all the whispers that it finds. The walls are listening when we talk, making echoes as we walk. There's no one left but you and me. It's like a made-up place that only we can see. Hold my hand and hear the words I say. Close your eyes and let us fade away. Build a secret place for you and me. Let our minds be caught up in a dream. Standing underneath the lights, look into each other's eyes. There's no one left but you and me. It's like a made-up place that only we can see. Standing underneath the lights, look into each other's eyes. Tired snowflakes are coming down, collapse into water when they hit the ground. Hear the sound of empty streets. Yesterday has gone to sleep, so all that's left is you and me. I can't promise you're the only thing I see. Hold my hand and hear the words I say. Close your eyes and let us fade away. Build a secret place for you and me. Let our minds be caught up in a dream.